Hi there, I'm Julie, and this is my reading update for the month of February. Every month, I like to share my Storygraph stats and the books I have read for that month. I love reading. It's been a huge part of my life since I was a kid, and I like to share what I enjoy with others, especially when it comes to books. First of all, how I track my reading, real quick. I use Goodreads and Storygraph, mostly Storygraph. Goodreads, I just use it to track the books I'm reading and do their yearly book challenge. I've been using Goodreads since roughly 2016, so it's just habit, and I like to keep updated on that. Storygraph, however, I like a lot more. I love the stats it gives you, clearly, since I'm going to be sharing some with you today. I also use it to track the books I own because it's so much easier to track your owned books through Storygraph than it is through Goodreads. And then I just keep updating. I try to update every single day how much I've read for that day. Sometimes I forget, but it's really nice because on Storygraph you can set it to a certain day. So like if I forget to do the day before, but I want to update it and I want the streak to continue, I'll put in what I read that next day, and I can change the date to the previous day so it keeps the streak going. Goodreads, you cannot do that unless there's some magical way that I have yet to figure out. I love Storygraph for that. And if you'd like to follow me on Storygraph, my username is Julie_EW. Feel free to follow me on Storygraph and see my reading updates and what I'm reading in real time. First up are my Storygraph stats. I read 4 books this month, which I read 3 in the month of January, so I'd say that's pretty good. There's one that I finished literally the second day of February. I read most of it in January, but we're not going to talk about that. I read 1,230 pages total. Physical books versus ebooks. 50-50 split this time, which I'm very proud of. I'm trying to read more physical books because I own a lot of books. I own over 400 and half of those I have yet to read. So I'm trying to read more books that are in my physical stash. So this month I read 2 ebooks and 2 physical books, which I consider a win. I usually read a physical book and an ebook on my Kindle at the same time, usually just different genres so I don't get the plots confused. So it tracks that I did 50-50 this month. My most read genres for the month. So my top 2 are romance and fantasy. In those genres, 2 books fall in each of those genres. However, all of my genres, including romance and fantasy, are LGBTQIA+, magical realism, young adult, short stories, literary, and contemporary. Alright, so now getting into the books I read for the month of February. First off, I finished Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the book that I finished literally like February 2nd is when I finished this. I read most of it in January, but you know what? I'm counting it for February because that's when I finished it. It is book 3 in the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and now Onyx Storm. It is a more in-depth fantasy book. The series isn't an easy breeze through it in a weekend type of series. Like these 3 books, especially the second and the third, Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, you have to pay attention to what you're reading. And you can't just like rifle through it quickly. I really enjoyed the series. I'm really enjoying the series, and I will continue to read it as Rebecca Yarros writes it, which she has said that book 4 is going to take a while before it comes out, which I totally respect. I get it. From what I've seen on social media is she went through, it was really hard on her to write as many books as she's written in such a short amount of time. In the meantime, if you want to read more Rebecca Yarros, her contemporary romances, very good. I've read a few of them now. I think I read them last year. Very good. Really enjoyed it. Obviously, contemporary romance, they're set in the real world, they're not fantasy. But I really like them. Oh, and that was one of the physical books that I read. However, I don't have it in front of me because the day I finished it, I gave it to my sister to borrow. Actually, the day after I finished it, I gave it to my sister to borrow. The next book I finished, I read on Kindle, is The Measure by Nikki Erlich. In my notes I have in front of me, I just put in all caps, everyone needs to read this. By far, this is my favorite book of the year. Obviously, we're only in February and I've only finished 7 books, but this is my favorite book of the year so far, and it might actually stay favorite book of the year because it's that good. Basically, this is the magical realism genre. So, one random day, everyone over the age of 22 is delivered a wooden box to wherever they reside. And in that box is a string. And the string signifies how long your life is. So if you have a short string, your life will be cut short. If you have a long string, you will live a very long life into your 80s, 90s, what have you. The politics it gets in, like, it's not a political book, but it gets into what politics would look like if these strings were around, what your relationships would look like, what the job market would look like. It is fascinating. Like, I highly recommend this book to every single person because it makes you think. Because, you know, if the strings weren't around, none of this would have happened. It follows a lot of viewpoints, which I actually appreciate because, you know, there's more than just one type of person in the world, but all viewpoints are connected somehow or other. It is so good, so well written, and this was her debut novel. I can only wish for my debut novel to be this profound and this well written. It's incredible. Everyone needs to read it, in my opinion. So good. Highly recommend. Okay, next. Legendary. Oh, I actually have this one. Legendary by Stephanie Garber. It is the second book in the Caraval series. I like it. It's a good young adult fantasy series. If you are like just dipping your toes into fantasy and you don't want something like super in-depth with fae and other worlds and this is a good start. It is like elements of magic is what makes it fantasy. And I find elements of magic, and it's not like in depth. Well, it's not like Harry Potter magic where everyone has it. It's more like immortal people, and these immortal people have magic. But they're still real people who don't have magic. Very, very good. So if you're new to fantasy or just like want to get into fantasy, I do recommend the Caraval series. There's one more full-length book called Finale, which I do have. I read Caraval back in like October, and I just now read Legendary. So I'll read Finale eventually, and then there is a short story, Spectacular, I believe it's called, that came out just this past winter, like the end of last year. The cover is beautiful. So yeah, Legendary. I recommend it. I really enjoyed it. And I'll continue reading Finale just to see where it goes. And last but not least is a short story that I read, The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez, which actually doesn't come out until March 1st. I got to read it because I have Amazon Prime, and they have a thing called Prime First Reads, where you get to choose a book out of however many that are releasing the next month, but you can read them a month early. I love Abby's books. I've fallen in love with her romance books, and the characters are just so real and relatable, and nothing like feels super forced. I love her writing. super cute, easy to read. If you want something, it's a good palate cleanser because it is a short story. It kind of goes through fast. Or maybe if you have trouble reading, you know, really long books, short stories are a great way to still read and still enjoy a story without like feeling like, oh my god, I'm trudging through 500 pages of this book. I'm never gonna find the end of it and I'll just give up reading. No, read short stories because short stories count as reading. It's a story. You're reading it, you're comprehending it. So, highly recommend The Fall Risk. Super cute, like I said. I really enjoyed the storyline. Yes, recommend. All 4 books, really. I enjoyed everything I read, which always is the case. I never read something that I don't like. I don't know. I am in the middle of reading a few books that I haven't finished yet, but I did start in the month of February, so a little teaser for you. And if you go follow my Storygraph, you'll be able to see what I'm reading and how far I am. But I'll tell you right now. So first one is What Happened to You by Bruce D. Perry, who I believe is a doctor, so Dr. Perry, and Oprah Winfrey. It is a nonfiction ebook. Right now I'm 20% through. It is, I don't usually read nonfiction, but this sounded really good to me. And because the subject matter it's not like a story that I'm imagining it in my head. Like, I have to think about the subject matter, so it is going to take me a little bit longer to get through it. And they even say in the book, like, if you need a break, take a break. It'll be there when you come back. So that's what I'm doing. I am taking a break from it, and I'll come back to it when I feel in the right headspace to read that kind of book. Because I'm not always in the right headspace to read nonfiction, to be quite honest, because I never read nonfiction. Sorry. I am reading The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. I'm really enjoying this. It's a fantasy. It's about the Olympic gods. I am 18% of the way through that book. I just started that a couple days ago. I'm really enjoying it. I read for quite a few hours in bed last night until almost midnight. Very much enjoying that one so far. And then my physical book that I'm reading right now is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. I'm about 19% through. That's a thriller. Really enjoying it. I've had that book in my collection for a few years now. I think I got it when it first came out, and I believe I saw it was 2023. So I've had it for a couple years. But you know what? It just sounded good to me right now. And I'm enjoying it so far. I'm curious to see where it goes. That's about it, I guess. So if you enjoyed this, give it a like. Comment down below if you have read any of these books. I'm curious to see. Onyx Storm was a very polarizing book, I feel like. I don't know. I've seen lots of mixed reviews on it, so I'm curious if any of these books, especially Onyx Storm, if you've read them. No spoilers, though. I'm a spoiler-free zone. Thank you. But let me know if you read any of these, if you liked them, what you thought, and if you have any book recommendations, let me know, because as we know, I love reading. I love books. And I could always use more to add to my TBR. Subscribe if you want to see more of this. And yeah, I'll see you guys in, what's the next one? I'll see you guys, I don't know, in the next one. Okay, bye. Ooh, the sunshine coming out. Oh. Okay, bye, sunshine. Okay, bye.